2002 was a season dominated by Michael Schumacher and Ferrari. He's going to take the checkered flag to win the first Grand Prix of the 2002 season.
100th podium.
Hand in the air for Michael Schumacher on the Ferrari.
Unbelievable.
Michael Schumacher, the winner.
Wow.
Michael Schumacher, another win for Scuderia Ferrari.
Michael Schumacher is the winner of the British Grand Prix.
Boy, oh boy.
He wins the World Championship.
Unbelievable.
This time, there is no mistaking who won this race. There he is, the world champion for 2002, Michael Schumacher. Schumacher, Schumacher, Schumacher. Hello and welcome to the 2002 edition of the Formula One Year in Racing. I'm Rick DeBrule, along with our regular Formula One broadcast team, David Hobbs, Steve Matchett, and Peter Windsor. All right, quickly, guys, we got to get your overall impressions of the year. David?
Well, a lot of people said this year was boring, but personally I thought it was absolutely fascinating to see Michael Schumacher just win race after race and direct that Ferrari team like he did. You know, we might not see a driver like that for another generation, I think.
Absolutely. To me, Formula One cannot be boring. There's always something to look at. And this was really, in many ways, a demonstration run by Ferrari. But it wasn't a perfect season. It was coming over the last couple of years, 2000, 2001. It was coming 2002. Nearly perfect. Could do better.
Almost perfect in itself, but almost perfect in the context of motor racing over the last 80 years. That's what made this a great season, I think. If you put it into that context, it was brilliant.
Yeah, no question. It was truly a great season for Michael Schumacher and Ferrari. Not only that, it was a season of record-breaking performances. The last time Michael Schumacher did not finish a race was last year's German Grand Prix. He has scored points in 22 consecutive races, an all-time record. The last time Schumacher did not finish on the podium, it was also last year at the Italian Grand Prix. He has now been in the top three for a record 19 straight races. In fact, only once in that time has he even finished as low as third. At the Belgian Grand Prix this year, Schumacher won for the 10th time, breaking his record total of 9 victories that he shared with Nigel Mansell. He finished the season with 11, giving him a career total of 64. His total of 144 points, that's a single-season record, as are Ferrari's 221 constructors' points. Ferrari won 15 of the 17 races in 2002, equaling a mark set by McLaren back in 1988. And by clinching the World Championship at the French Grand Prix, Michael Schumacher became only the second man, along with Juan Manuel Fangio, with 5 world titles.
You know, I love the racing, and you see now what has happened to achieve races, victories, and happenings like today. They are more than a big motivation to keep on going.
There are very few records left for Schumacher to break, and obviously he intends to continue racing for quite some time. Well, the last time we saw a team dominate like this was back in 1988 with McLaren. And Peter, we have to talk about how does this Ferrari team compare to that McLaren team?
A lot of parallels. When McLaren Honda won that championship in 88, they did so by maximizing one of the variables. They took Honda engines effectively away from Williams, nullified their opposition, and dominated the season. Michael Schumacher did that last winter when he persuaded McLaren to leave Bridgestone and left Ferrari on Bridgestone tyres. Big unfair advantage. Steve?
Yes, absolutely. I'd just like to stress the point about reliability. 15 out of 16 races in 1988. You can't do that without great reliability, of course. Honda only had 1 engine failure. What a difference to the 2002 season for Honda. With Monza race, they failed to win that year. This year, Ferrari, absolutely no engine problems in any race, really, once the races were underway. Terrific reliability.
And of course they had the preeminent driver in 88. Both McLaren drivers were pretty evenly matched, although Senna was probably just a bit better. But this year, Schumacher at Spa, we saw him absolutely leave his teammate for dead in the dust in one of the most difficult circuits. And that to me just shows where the drivers would be when they were left to race each other, which everybody wants them to do.
A prelude of more records to come, probably. Well, we are just getting started here on the Formula One Year in Racing. When we come back, we'll take a look at the first part of this season, a season that started off with a bang.
Rubens Barrichello's having none of it. Wow!
What a great start by Rubens. Oh! Back flying over Rubens Barrichello.
Oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy.
First turn.
Yeah.
Oh, that's an absolutely disastrous start.
When you look back at the 2002 season, you think about Ferrari's domination. But if you think back to the first part of the year, it looked like there would be a three-team race. The 2002 season started off in Australia with the Ferrari on pole position, but it wasn't Michael Schumacher. Rubens Barrichello started from the pole, but his race didn't last past the first corner as Ralf Schumacher took out Barrichello. Alan McNish, Olivier Panis, Jenson Button, Giancarlo Fisichella, along with both Saubers, Felipe Massa and Nick Heidfeld. After the restart, David Coulthard led Jarno Trulli, but just a short while later threw a second place away, bringing out the safety car once again. Coulthard still led, but went off coming up for the second restart. Juan Pablo Montoya passed Michael Schumacher for the lead into the first corner. Now Schumacher regained the lead with a terrific move on Montoya just a few laps later, and it looked like this would be the very first of many battles between the Colombian and the German. Schumacher went on to win in last year's Ferrari. Montoya was second, and Kimi Räikkönen, in his very first race for McLaren Mercedes, came home third. In Malaysia, the Schumacher-Montoya battle continued in turn one as Schumacher started from the pole right alongside Montoya. The two drivers made contact. Schumacher needed only a new front wing. Montoya got a drive-through penalty as a result. That left Rubens Barrichello with the lead, but Ralf Schumacher had a better pit strategy. Barrichello would later retire with just 17 laps to go, but this race belonged to Ralf Schumacher, with Montoya scrambling back to finish second and Michael Schumacher third. The Brazilian Grand Prix marked the debut of the new Ferrari F2002 and the end of the championship hopes of everyone else. Montoya won the pole, and he and Schumacher got together again on lap one. This time it was Montoya who needed the new wing, dropping him to the back of the pack. Hometown hero Rubens Barrichello, who was still running last year's chassis, was on a three-stop strategy, but another mechanical failure ended his run while he was out in front. Michael Schumacher reassumed the lead and was pressured all the way to the checkered flag by his brother. It was another win for Michael, his second of the season, the first for the F2002 car. Ralf was second, David Coulthard was third. At Imola, both Michael Schumacher and Rubens Barrichello had the F2002, and they started from the front row of the grid. At the start, Schumacher led his brother, who got by Barrichello for second, with Montoya following in fourth. Michael was cruising, and Barrichello was able to get second place from Ralf during the pit stops. At the end, it was a sight we have become very used to seeing, a Ferrari 1-2. Michael in front of Rubens in the F2002's Ralf Schumacher was third. In Barcelona, Michael was on pole with Barrichello alongside, but at the start of the formation lap, Barrichello's bad luck continued as he stalled. In fact, he would not run a single lap. Michael cruised to victory, 35 seconds over Montoya. David Coulthard ended up third. Well, the F2002 may not have made its appearance until Brazil, but it really was supposed to show up much later than that. Steve, they rushed it out a little more than they'd planned.
Yes, they did. It was really intended to come out at Imola. I think probably at one stage Ferrari had the intention of releasing it at the start of the season, but they'd come up with a revolutionary new compact, very compact transmission, and they had reliability issues with that. And for that reason, I think they wanted to delay it and issue the car at San Marino, basically on home turf. Because remember, the first three races were flyaway, so they're a long, long way away from their facilities. But because of the strength of the Williams in the second race, I think they really had no choice but to issue it quick. And because they had to do some remachining to the transmission, they were only able to get one example flown over to Brazil, and of course that went to Michael Schumacher. The rest really is history.
The ironic thing, of course, is that the car that broke in Brazil was Rubens Barrichello 2001 car, which is the old reliable, and it quit. And that great pass, too, by Michael Schumacher on Montoya at Melbourne. What a pass that was. Really well set up and beautifully executed. Of course, the car was great, but, I mean, it was a hell of a pass.
Yeah, because not only he set him up to initially on the outside, but then took him on the inside after going through when normally the pass would have already been done or missed.
And passing was a word that was talked about a lot after the Brazilian Grand Prix, because of course that was the race where Ralf Schumacher, in the opinion of some people, could have raced Michael a bit harder. And I always got the impression after the race that Michael knew what strategy Ralf was on, but Ralf didn't know what strategy Michael was on. Bit of brotherly racing going on there.
All right, 5 races into the 2002 season. It looked like Ferrari would run away with both championships with very little drama. We'll be right back with part 2 of our recap, where we will see Ferrari run away, but boy, was there drama. But this year, let's see.
He did it!
I don't believe it!
Wow. I don't believe that.
I don't believe it.
A few minutes ago, we showed you part of the 2002 season in review. Right now, we have part two, starting with the Austrian Grand Prix, a race that will not soon be forgotten.
From Spain, the teams went on to Austria in one of the most controversial races in recent memory. Rubens Barrichello started from the pole and dominated the race. At about the halfway point, there was a terrifying accident as Nick Heidfeld collided with Takuma Sato. The Jordan driver was taken to a hospital by helicopter, but only as a precaution, as it turned out. He was okay. Up front, Barrichello was comfortably in the lead late in the race. The gap to second-place Michael Schumacher, though, was getting smaller. Would there be team orders? Oh, yes, indeed there were. On the last corner of the last lap, Barrichello pulled over, allowing Michael Schumacher to win. The crowd did not like the team's decision, and Schumacher was so embarrassed he made Barrichello take the top step of the podium, and that caused even more controversy. This was not Michael Schumacher nor Ferrari's finest moment. Next up was the Monaco Grand Prix. Juan Pablo Montoya started from the pole, but David Coulthard got the jump at the start and took the lead. On track, Coulthard was having a slight problem with the engine, but it turned out to be a problem the McLaren Mercedes team was able to fix from the pits with their two-way telemetry. Coulthard led wire to wire, his second career win in the Principality. The Schumacher brothers finished second and third, Michael over Ralph. In Canada, it was again Montoya starting from the pole and getting the lead at the start. But he was soon passed by Barrichello, who was obviously in a two-stop pit strategy. Montoya ended up retiring with mechanical failure, leaving Michael Schumacher on his way to a relatively easy victory. David Coulthard was able to hold off Barrichello for second place. From Canada, the teams headed to Germany for the European Grand Prix at the Nürburgring. The first lap was the most exciting of the season. Montoya's string of pole positions continued, but Ralf Schumacher grabbed the lead at the start, with Barrichello slotting into second just in front of Montoya. Michael Schumacher passed the Colombian for third, while up ahead, Barrichello had made it past Ralf for the lead. Michael passed his brother, and the Ferraris were 1-2 by lap 3. Montoya's streak of retirements continued. This time, he collided with David Coulthard as they battled for fourth place. Both drivers, as it turned out, dropped out of the race. The big question at the end of the race, which Ferrari would be allowed to win? Would there be a repeat of the Austrian GP, or would Barrichello be allowed to win? Well, Barrichello was allowed. Michael was second, and a dominant Ferrari 1-2. Kimi Räikkönen rounded out the podium with third. At the British Grand Prix, rain was a factor for the race for the first time this season. Montoya started from the pole once again. Barrichello once again stalled on the grid, this time having to start from the back of the pack. The rain turned things upside down for everyone but the Ferrari drivers. As it turns out, Michael won. Barrichello scrambled to a second-place finish, and Montoya did a tremendous job on inferior tires to come home third. At the French Grand Prix, Michael Schumacher needed to win in order to clinch his 5th World Drivers' Championship, to equal the record of Juan Manuel Fangio. It looked like the celebration would have to wait when Schumacher drove over the white line on the pit exit. As a result, he got a drive-through penalty. Kimi Räikkönen was set to win his first ever Grand Prix, but he spun on Alan McNish's oil with just 5 laps to go. That allowed Michael Schumacher to go on to victory and clinch the championship in just the season's 11th race. The newly crowned world champion came home to the German Grand Prix as the man to beat. He started from the pole and steadily drew away from the rest of the field. Montoya and Räikkönen had a great battle for 4th place, and the Colombians squeezed by for the position. But the day, once again, belonged to Schumacher, only his 2nd win at Hockenheim and his 1st in a Ferrari.
Well, back after Austria, there were those who said that the team orders tainted the championship. Looking back at the season right now, David, do you think it was the case? Did it really taint the championship?
I don't really think it did. I mean, it wasn't a great move. There's no doubt about it. The way they did it was pretty khaki-handed. But, I mean, I don't think it really tainted the season. The fact is, They wanted team orders. They wanted Michael Schumacher to win the championship. He was leading the championship, and he probably should have won the race. Although at that stage they probably didn't need to. They must have known by then the writing was on the wall for everybody else. They were going to win it anyway.
Yes, I think so. For me, I think at this stage of the season, the highlight really was the two-way telemetry intervention by Pat Fry, the chief engineer at McLaren Mercedes, on David Coulthard's car when he had that problem with the auxiliary oil tank. There's been a lot of debate whether or not the two-way data transmission is a good thing or a bad thing. Should it be banned? Is it detracting from the sport? Well, for me, really, it just added reliability. And if it wasn't for that intervention, two-way telemetry, that would have been McLaren's one and only win of the season out of the window.
And the thing that astonished me that day was that during the race, when the smoke was coming out of the back of the McLaren, Ron Dennis was interviewed live for the famous digital TV, which hopefully we're going to get in America next year. And he actually said live, don't worry, we got the problem under control. We know what it is. We're going to change a few things and the smoke's going to go away in a few laps. Now, if you'd been Ferrari or Williams, that's information you would have wanted to have known. All the viewers knew it, but Frank Williams and John Todd didn't. It's amazing.
And the intriguing thing was David Coulthard didn't know it. They never actually told him about it during the race. All right, Michael Schumacher clinched the title in France, and Ferrari easily captured the manufacturer's crown as well. Now, you would have thought there would not be much to talk about for the last part of the season. Well, coming up, we'll take a look back at the U.S. Grand Prix, a race like the Austrian Grand Prix that was shrouded in controversy.
Coming through the final turn, coming onto the front straightaway here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and it is Michael Schumacher letting his teammates slide up his... Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Oh, don't let him go too far. Huh. Wait a minute, who won that race? Barrichello won the race. Wow.
When we left off our season recap, Michael Schumacher had just won for the second time in his career at Hockenheim. We're going to pick it up with Ferrari's coronation at Hungary.
After a 3-week layoff, the 2002 season resumed in Hungary. Things picked up right where they left off. It was another Ferrari 1-2. This time, Barrichello was allowed to win, with Schumacher second. The 16 points were more than enough for Ferrari to clinch their 4th consecutive Constructors' Championship. Spa-Francorchamps is a special place for Michael Schumacher. It is the track nearest to his home. It is where he made his Formula One debut back in 1991. He won his first Grand Prix the next year, and last year he broke the all-time record for career victories. This year, he led from start to finish, winning his 10th race of the year, another all-time record. This was a race to remember, the greatest driver of his time in the best car on the most challenging track. When Schumacher finally decides to hang up his helmet, the 2002 Grand Prix of Belgium may be remembered as his signature race. With Italy, Juan Pablo Montoya had the pole, but lost out to teammate Ralf Schumacher on the first turn. Later, Ralf blew an engine. Rubens Barrichello managed to go by Juan Pablo Montoya for the lead, and in fact, he went on to win another Ferrari 1-2 finish. Barrichello just ahead of his teammate, Michael Schumacher. At the United States Grand Prix, Ferrari made a point to tell everyone that Rubens Barrichello and Michael Schumacher were going to race each other for the win. At the start of the race, Schumacher led Barrichello into the first corner, followed by David Coulthard's McLaren and Ralf Schumacher. At the beginning of the second lap, Juan Pablo Montoya tried to pass his teammate on the outside of turn 1. Ralf lost control of his Williams, hitting Montoya and knocking his own rear wing off. Montoya wound up 4th. Ralf finished 2 laps down. In the end, the result was a lie. The finish, like Austria, was contrived. Michael Schumacher led Rubens Barrichello by at the finish line. It was the second closest finish in Formula One history, the closest finish in Indianapolis Motor Speedway history. The Japanese Grand Prix was the final race of the 2002 season, and it was a fitting finish, not just for Michael Schumacher, who claimed his 11th victory of the season, or Ferrari, which got yet another 1-2 finish. But there was also a wonderful run by Takuma Sato. Not only did he finish 5th, his only points of the year, but those 2 points also gave Jordan 6th place in the Constructors' Championship, just edging out Jaguar.
Those points by Takuma Sato made millions of dollars for Eddie Jordan's team, but as we tape this, he is still not confirmed for next year. And Peter, here's the question. Who would you have drive that Jordan next year?
Well, just looking at that, Rick, just before we get on to that, I'm reminded that Eddie Jordan was actually in tears as Taku crossed the line there. That's how big a moment that was for him. I'd keep Taku Sato. He did a great job. He had a difficult season. He had a lot of accidents, some of which were his fault. But he was brilliant in Japan. I mean, he's just got better and better as the year went on. He's fit, he's hungry, he works hard. He's a very, very technical driver. I'd keep the guy.
Steve?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think he is very young, he's very technical, and that's the sort of guy you want in the car, somebody that's very dedicated. Of course, there are other drivers on the market now, some are getting on in years a little bit, and some people are not quite so dedicated in their career. I'm mentioning no names. I'm mentioning no names.
Still some question about him. David, who would you put in the Jordan?
Well, I'm not quite sure, but one guy who I don't want to see on the scrap heap next year is Felipe Massa. He's 20 years old going into this season. I thought he had a pretty good season. I mean, he had some crashes, but I mean, hopefully he's got those out of his blood now, and he picked up a lot of experience over the year, and he was fast. It looks like a good bloke to me.
It's a shame Sauber's paid the cost for him, and now they're not going to get to reap the rewards.
He'd be great as a Ferrari test driver for a year. That'd be brilliant for him.
And he may do that. All right, that wraps up our Ferrari portion of the highlight show. When we come back, we'll have some more breathtaking moments from 2002.
Boy, oh boy!
Side by side into the turn, and
He's got him there, coming out. Yes, oh, Raikkonen right off in the dirt there. Oh.
Here's a look at the final drivers and constructors' points. Schumacher and Barrichello equal the total of all the other drivers combined. Montoya and Coulthard edged out their respective teammates. Our 2x2 results continue with Jenson Button ahead of Jarno Trulli at Renault. Giancarlo Fisichella takes home the top Honda honors. Felipe Massa lost his Sauber drive after scoring an impressive 4 points in his rookie year, only 3 less than his more experienced teammate Nick Heidfeld. Turning to the constructors' points, Ferrari set a record for points in one season. The previous best, 199 by McLaren back in 1988. Toyota and Minardi, though, they ended up with 2 points each, those points representing an achievement for both teams. Now, 2002 was a remarkably safe season in Grand Prix racing. We had some scary moments, but no driver was seriously injured, and that is why we could have some fun with the next piece.
back flying over Rubens Barrichello.
That's a ride.
Oh boy, no!
Oh, there's the impact. Oh, big hit on Kimi Raikkonen. Oh, Montoya spins.
Well, that was a bit careless.
But you see, it's a fairly hard hit into the tires.
Go by
Oh,
there.
yes,
Come
they
on,
got it.
both
Took them
teams.
both out.
Well, that's not in the game plan.
Now, there was luck, obviously, in the fact that no one was seriously hurt, but there was also a lot of skill and a lot of design, Steve, in the way these cars have progressed over the years.
There is, very much so. There's a lot of work gone in to make these cars as safe as possible, but I still think that the sport is very unsafe, really by virtue of the fact you've got 200-mile-an-hour race cars, an open-wheel formula with a guy sat in there driving along. Now, you've got crush structures front and rear, and the chassis are crash tested, but remember this, the FIA crash test is at 34 miles an hour. That's about half the speed that the cars travel down the pit lane in. So how safe can these things be? Only so safe, I think.
And the point to remember, of course, is that every team is a constructor in its own right. That is what you have to be in order to enter the World Championship. You have to be capable of designing, manufacturing, developing these cars and passing all those tests, unlike any other form of motor racing.
I think the two luckiest guys there were Takuma Sato at Austria there, where he got nailed by Heidfeld. Gearbox first. Heidfeld spun around and went right into the side of the car with the gearbox and just missed getting Sato properly. And the other one was Fisichella at Magny Cours, where he speared off the road, hit that huge tyre barrier, missed the concrete barrier by about a foot.
Yeah, and look at Alan McNish as well. Very, very similar situation. If McNish had gone in front into that tyre barrier instead of the rear, I think we would have lost a driver.
We'll be right back, but first, we want to bring you some examples of David Hobbs' expert and insightful commentary. We want to thank loyal Formula One viewer Stephen Hall for his help in gathering the following material. And as Bob Varsha likes to say, don't try this at home. We are trained professionals.
Whoa, 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 crikey. Whoa, 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 whoa. Crikey. Whoa, 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 whoa. Whoa, whoa. Ooh. Uh-oh. Whoa. Whoa. Shut up. Wow. Whoa, there he goes. Boy, oh boy. Whoa. Boy, oh boy. Jeepers creepers.
Oh, Zach, oh, he's still got it going.
Whoa.
Can he make it?
Fantastic. Yes. No. Oh. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh. Don't break both my cars. It's gruesome is what it is. Blinking gruesome. Taking on tires and fuel. There's about 140 in the rain.
Yes,
He's
it is.
mad.
What is he?
He's mad. Yano truly gone done blowed up. Bring a large appendage attached. No, yes, oh. Feverish activity going on here. Oh, wow. Oh, God, another duck.
For Simone, his girlfriend.
If she played the cards right, she could be my girlfriend.
Welcome back to the Formula One Year in Racing. No question the Ferrari was awesome this year, so we asked Steve Matchett to analyze why the Ferrari F2002 was so fast and ultimately so dominant.
The F2002 has proved itself to be amongst the most successful Grand Prix cars in history. To appreciate exactly how Ferrari's engineers achieved this, we should first look at the team's extremely close relationship with Bridgestone. In the winter of 2001, in a move which in hindsight seems to have been a stroke of pure genius, Ferrari agreed to supply Bridgestone with all its chassis, engine and transmission data. In turn, Bridgestone agreed to disclose to Ferrari all information concerning its tyre compound and construction techniques. A team of Ferrari engineers would be permanently based in Japan, while Bridgestone's engineers would be free to roam the laboratories of Maranello. McLaren, who at that time were also a Bridgestone team, decided they couldn't agree to such an open exchange and jumped ship, Ron Dennis agreeing terms with Michelin. The question is, did Ferrari suspect that this would be McLaren's reaction to their own proposed deal with Bridgestone?
It was a very, very close relationship, totally open relationship on tyre technology, totally open relationship on car technology. So it was going to be difficult to see how McLaren could fit into that relationship, and I think they saw it. I think McLaren saw it and decided that they couldn't fit into that relationship, so that's why they made their decision.
Whether they did or not, the upshot was that as far as life at the front of the grid was concerned, Ferrari and Bridgestone now enjoyed an exclusive relationship, one of trust and rapid technical progress. Conversely, Michelin found itself compromised by virtue of having to design its tyres around the differing chassis requirements of both Williams and McLaren. That was never going to be easy. Advantage Ferrari. The suspension layout and steering geometry of the car was specifically designed to complement the tyres, and the carbon fibre wishbones were further developed throughout the year to keep pace with Bridgestone's own progress. There's no question that the bespoke Bridgestones played an enormous role in the success of the F2002, a view which Ferrari themselves would be more than happy to support. Even so, there is much more to the F2002 than just tyres. Rory Byrne remained faithful to the single keel concept and endowed his car with beautiful aerodynamics. Whether configured for high downforce or low, the car remained equally well balanced. Compared to the F2001, the combined mass of the components of the rear of the chassis, notably the V10 engine and the ultra-low cast titanium transmission, were significantly reduced to help the new car's overall weight distribution and increase the available mechanical grip. As a result, the F2002 remained stable and sure-footed under all conditions, whether riding low-speed curbs or sweeping through the high-speed corners at Spa or Monza. And when these basic mechanical components are further complemented by Ferrari's highly sophisticated electronics, the two-way data transmission and the onboard systems controlling the engine management as well as the gearbox and differential parameters, the result is a machine that has redefined Formula One car design.
Well, I mean, there we are, really. For saying that every team, and Peter, you touched on it earlier on, the fact all the teams are their own constructions, they start with a blank sheet of paper. The technical regulations really become the designer's blank sheet of paper. Everybody's got the same starting point, but boy, oh boy, what did Ferrari do there, and what did everybody else not do?
What did Jaguar do wrong, for example? I mean,
besides everything?
Well, I mean, the rule book can actually design a car for you. It's unbelievably explicit in every dimension. And it's amazing, I think, that teams like BAR and Jaguar can get it so wrong year in, year out, and other teams more or less get it right. every year. And, you know, there's a pattern there. I mean, there's no magic to it. Ultimately, it's down to very good engineering in Formula One, and people can talk about Michael this and Rubens that. Bottom line is, it was a brilliantly engineered car. One point about that, the gearbox that we've all talked about was actually conceived by the Wiseman family here in the United States. It was given to Williams, John Sutton took it to Ferrari, and now he's gone to McLaren.
Well, of course, Peter's looking for a job with Jaguar next year. There's no doubt about it. The other thing, of course, you've got to remember with the Ferrari is the reliability.
Yes.
I mean, they all start with the same blank sheet of paper when it comes to engines, too. They're all the same size. They've got to be V10s, can't have V12s. And, I mean, that thing of Schumacher's on the podium every single race.
Absolutely amazing. All right, time to take another break. But first, we've got a trivia question for you. Can you name the only driver to finish in the top 3 in the race or in qualifying other than drivers for Ferrari, McLaren, and Williams? We'll have a video clue and the answer when we come back. All right, so did you get the answer to the trivia question? The only driver in the top 3 other than a Schumacher, Barrichello, Montoya, Coulthard, or Raikkonen was Eddie Irvine. A lot of red, blue, and silver in that last video clip. Now on to the best of the rest. Before the 2002 season started, McLaren switched to Michelin tires, which put them on equal footing with Williams, but effectively, they gave Ferrari the advantage they had. And though the competition between McLaren and Mercedes, Williams, BMW was for second place, they had a pretty good fight.
How do you declare a winner between McLaren and Williams? Each team won one race, Ralf Schumacher in Malaysia and David Coulthard in Monaco. Now, McLaren almost had another race in the bag in France, but Kimi Raikkonen went off on Alan McNish's oil, ended up second. Looking at qualifying, Juan Pablo Montoya was as fast as Michael Schumacher over one lap. Each driver had 7 pole positions. Montoya even had a streak of 5 in a row. The average best starting position, it was 2.29 for Williams, 4.65 for McLaren. The average best finishing position, 2.94 compared to 3.82, with the advantage going to Williams.
And not having the time to develop the tyre to the chassis has definitely cost us some time as well. If you look at the performance of the Williams in qualifying, our race performance nonetheless has been pretty strong relative to theirs. It's just been, you know, quite a step to where Ferrari are.
You always want more. It's been disappointing we haven't won a race, but on the other hand, we had 7 poles, but it's not that bad.
What does it mean when you have so many poles and you don't have a win? What does that actually mean?
It means the car is not quick enough in the race and it's really quick in qualifying.
Thank you very much.
For Montoya, the season began with high hopes of challenging Schumacher for the championship. In Australia, we saw a little of the battle that we hope to see all year. But Montoya was plagued by a lack of reliability, inconsistent tire performance, and some questionable judgment on his part. He did, however, manage 50 points, good enough for 3rd in the Drivers' Championship. Montoya scored 8 more points than his teammate, who had a fairly, shall we call it, uninspiring season after his win in Malaysia and a close 2nd place finish to his brother in Brazil.
If there was a lot, it was in general this year that we weren't able to beat Ferrari so far, except once in Malaysia. And that's something we have to find out and find our way back into being able to win races on our own again.
For McLaren, well, they feel Kimi Raikkonen is the real deal. He outqualified David Coulthard in 10 of the 17 races and showed flashes of brilliance, especially Magny-Cours, and again by qualifying on the outside pole at Spa.
So what are the teams going to do? Do you stop with a single keel system the way that Williams have and Ferrari have? Remember that the F2002 has just proved one of the most dominant cars in history. Or do you go to the twin coil arrangement like Adrian Newey put onto the McLaren MP415? I think the jury's still out. We have to wait to see what the 2003 cars are going to look like. That'll tip off what the aerodynamicists have been working on all year.
And Williams has promised a radical new car, at least so they said, for next year. All right, the next tier of teams after Ferrari, McLaren, and Williams are Sauber, Jordan, Jaguar, British American Racing, and this year's best of the rest, Renault.
One of the better turnarounds of 2002 had to be the Renault team. After a miserable 2001, Renault, behind a maturing Jenson Button and an improving Jarno Trulli, went from 10 points in 7th place to 23 points in 4th. Sauber finished 2001 behind Ferrari, McLaren, and Williams, and meant to hold on to that position this year. Felipe Massa looked like yet another young talent discovered by Peter Sauber, and may have had the pass of the year, getting by Jarno Trulli for 8th place in the San Marino Grand Prix. But the Brazilian ended up losing the Sauber ride for 2003 in favor of Nick Heidfeld and Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who made a brief appearance at the U.S. Grand Prix. One of the more memorable moments of the season came in the final race at the Japanese Grand Prix. Takuma Sato, a Japanese driver with a Japanese engine, a Honda, in the back of his Jordan, finished 5th to the delight of the home crowd. Even more delighted was Eddie Jordan because the points Sato earned moved the team from 8th to 6th in the constructors' standings. Jaguar had a terrible season where they changed just about every component on the car. Eddie Irvine scored all of the team's points with a 4th place in Australia, a 6th in Belgium, and an attrition-aided podium finish in Italy. The success of BAR's season depended a great deal on what Jordan was able to accomplish with the same Honda engines. Going into the final race, BAR and Jordan were tied with 7 points, but Sato's 5th place gave Jordan the season advantage. However, Honda will stay with BAR in 2003, as Jordan will be powered by Ford engines.
Well, Renault were the best of the rest, and next year, of course, they're changing Jenson Button for Fernando Alonso, so they're going to make some changes there. And Renault are going to look pretty strong, I think, next year also, of course, on Michelin. Honda engines in BAR and Jordan. Next year, they're going to stick with BAR and taking on Jenson Button. Jordan are going to go to the Ford engine with a deal with the DHL, which, of course, is now completely different. Jaguar, well, they changed everything on the car this year, as we heard. Next year, they're going to change both drivers as well, as Webber and Pizzonia take over for that team there. So a lot of changes in Jaguar next year, but they're going to need a lot of work doing to that car yet.
They better get some money out of their project or the whole thing's going to be in big trouble. Well, there are 2 more teams that we have not mentioned. That's Toyota and Minardi.
The highlight for each of these teams came at the season's first race in Australia. Mark Webber in the Minardi trying to hold off Mika Salo. Webber was trying to score the first point for his team since 1999. Salo was trying to score points for his team in their very first race ever. Salo pushed and spun, leaving 5th place to Webber. Mika was able to continue and brought Toyota 1 point for his 6th place finish. Webber was jubilant, and so were the Australian fans. Mika Salo would score another 6th place in Brazil, each team ending the season with 2 points. Toyota is pouring millions of dollars into their Formula One effort. Many people expected them to struggle to qualify this year, and on that basis alone, 2002 should be considered a huge success. For Minardi, well, they did struggle to qualify. Alex Jung, for example, did not make the field in 3 races. The team struggled financially as well, fortunate to complete the entire season.
Well, Toyota defied all their critics, particularly me, by doing so well. Nobody imagined that, based in Germany and doing their own engine, they could be so successful. So full marks to them. And who am I to criticise them now for getting rid of 2 great drivers like Mika Salo and Alan McNish? I personally wouldn't have changed drivers after a season like that, but they've done so. Let's not criticise them. Minardi, can't say much about them. I think technically they were absolutely abysmal. But I think the quote of the year was Mark Webber's when the rear wing came off the car in the Spanish Grand Prix warm-up before the race. And afterwards he said, well, they told me they were going to change the engine mixture a bit, and I was looking to pick up a few revs, and suddenly the revs went up, and then I saw the rear wing flying off the car, and I thought, yeah, that's a funny way to do the mixture.
Surprises, 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 always for the driver. All right, thanks, Peter. Well, one team that did not complete the season was Arrows. They missed the last 5 races due to financial difficulties, but there is still hope that they will be back in 2003. Now, when we come back, it will be time to look ahead to next year. 2003 will be drastically different. New rules have been added to make the show better. We'll talk about what we have to look forward to, including the TV coverage, when we come back. Back in October, the World Motorsport Council changed some of the rules that will make things different, if not more interesting, in 2003. First, there will be single-car qualifying on Friday and Saturday. The point system changes. 8 points now awarded for second-place finish and scoring through the top 8 positions. There's a ban on team orders, though we're not quite sure how that's going to be enforced. And teams will now be allowed to use 2 different dry tire compounds. And Peter, you're thinking that those tire changes are going to have a huge impact on the sport.
I think they will, for 2 reasons. One, it should make McLaren a little bit more competitive with Ferrari. It may not help Williams, but it might change things a bit there, because there were occasions in 2002 when Michelin had to make a decision, and if you've got one team like Williams using its tyres a lot and a team like McLaren, which is easier on tyres, you've got to go for the hard tyre, because what you don't need is your tyres being destroyed in front of TV cameras. But that's a small thing. Much bigger than that is the fact that it's going to cost Michelin a fortune. They're going to be spending twice as much money designing tyres specifically for these two teams. Bridgestone, meanwhile, can just carry on as they have been with Ferrari, exclusively, effectively with Ferrari.
They'll also have to make tyres for your new team, Jaguar.
All right, David, let's talk about the points.
Well, the points, they've narrowed the points down so that you don't get the big gap if you win the race, which I never think is a very good thing. If you win a race, you should get more points, but now they've closed it all up to try and keep the championship close towards the end of the season. Obviously, you get points down to 8th place now, which is going to let more people have points. But have they changed the results this year? Not an awful lot. I still think they should add a point for fastest lap and for pole.
All right, single car qualifying, Steve. You think that's going to be expensive?
I think it's going to be very expensive, but I do agree with you, David, that I think a point for pole would be a terrific idea. Basically, what they've done now is they've done away with the qualifying session on Saturday, the 1 hour period between 1 and 2 o'clock, and they're going to have single car qualifying. It's going to make it very expensive because people are going to have to produce one-lap special cars.
All right, well, needless to say, we could talk about the new rules for a very long time. In fact, we're going to get an opportunity to talk more about that in a roundtable discussion about the new rules, Ferrari's team orders, and everything else that has come up this year. So check out our Formula One roundtable at these times. We'll be right back. Well, there's some exciting news at the end of 2002 for viewers of Formula One. Bernie Ecclestone announced he would abandon his digital pay-per-view system, which means that over-the-air broadcasters like us will receive the race feed with all of Bernie's bells and whistles.
What we produce is very, very good. And for what people expected to pay, I was shattered to find that they didn't and haven't and wouldn't. But this is something worldwide. Pay-per-view does not work. And nobody knows why. With all of our experience now and the equipment we have, we can now feed that into the free-to-air television, so everyone will be getting a much, much, much better show, if that's the right word. I mean, there'll be a lot more to see.
Well, we know we can look forward to better TV pictures next year, but what are we going to look forward to in terms of racing, David?
Well, I think a lot of teams are going to improve next year, but the one that I think is going to have the most chance is BAR. They've got the sole use of the Honda engine next year. Honda got a great heritage in Formula One racing, there's no doubt about it, and I think it's really time that they came to life now, and with BAR next year and Jenson Button, maybe they'll be able to do it.
Steve?
Well, for me, Rick, if there was a disappointment in 2002, it might sound a little harsh, but it was really the Williams FW24 was probably just not able to get on the pace with the Ferrari. And really, I would have liked the Williams camp to have got the rear end of the car sorted out. Now, for next year, the FW25, Williams leading lights, Patrick Head, Sam Michael and Gavin Fisher, with those bespoke tyres come on board. I would like to see that car working a lot better, and they're going to be the guys to take the fight to Ferrari.
I think amongst the midfield, despite what I said about Jaguar, I think Jaguar could go quite well next year. They've got some decent drivers for a change, Pizzonia and Mark Webber. And I think they should do well. They've got the budget, they've got the facilities. But I think Michael's still going to win it, and he's going to beat Fangio's record. He's going to win his 6th World Championship, and I hope he does. He will deserve to do that. But the big question is, with all these rule changes, David, with all that going on, how's that going to impact on the future of the Steve Matchett fan club?
Well, there you have it. Of course, all good things have to come to an end, and luckily the Steve Matchett fan club is probably one of those which will just wither and die on the vine in the way it probably should do.
So what you're saying is buy your T-shirts now, buy all your team paraphernalia. All right. Thanks a lot, gentlemen. Well, as we wrap up this year in racing for Formula One, we want to make the same speech that Bob Varsh has made for the past 2 years. At the time of this taping, Speed Channel does not have the rights for Formula One in 2003. Now, we're committed to Formula One racing, as we have been for the past 7 years, and we are negotiating with Mr. Ecclestone. So keep checking speedtv.com, because as soon as an announcement is made regarding the television rights for 2003, we will have it on the website. Now, we do have some other good news. Speed Channel will broadcast the Formula 3000 races live next year on Saturday mornings. So for David Hobbs, Steve Matchett, and Peter Windsor, I'm Rick DeBrule. We had a great time in 2002. We hope to see you from Australia on March 9th.